That's Tom King.
I wrote a whole thing called the Trilogy of Good Intentions because good intentions don't always end up in good results.
He created this show. Keep listening, because a minute later he says something a lot heavier. Help and fascism. About the Green Lanterns. From the guy who writes them.
And that tension exists in comics, and it's one of the great sort of themes, the sort of concept between, help and fascism.
He says it on a press tour, by the way. 2 questions later, somebody asks him about Guy Gardner's haircut. That's usually where the real answers live, somewhere between the fun ones. And once you've heard it, the pilot changes shape. The body on the football field. The sheriff who wants these men out of her county. The long stretch where nobody uses a superpower for anything. None of that is filler between the green stuff. That is the argument. And here's the thing. He's not talking about the villain. There isn't a big bad in that sentence. He's talking about the people who hand out the rings. Because, look, here's what most people watching don't know. This isn't the Guardians' first attempt at keeping order. It's the second. The first time, they built machines. Robots. They called them the Manhunters. And the pitch was beautiful. No fear, no bias, no fatigue. Nothing to bribe. Perfect police. Write the law into them and let them run. You can hear how good that sounds in a meeting. And you already know how this ends. Every story about perfect police finishes the same way, right? The Manhunters couldn't tell a criminal apart from a person who happened to be standing next to one. They couldn't tell the difference between good and evil at all, not really, because those aren't things you can put in a rule book. So they did what a machine does when the rule is eliminate disorder. So they killed people, then planets, then whole sectors. In the comics, there's a stretch of space that got wiped so thoroughly it has its own name, the Forgotten Zone. Not a battle, a cleanup. And the Guardians shut them down and tried again. That's the part that gets me, honestly. They didn't stop and think maybe the whole idea needed rethinking. They ran a post-mortem and decided the problem was the material. Machines can't judge, so use living beings. Give them free will. Give them moral character. Pick carefully. Same plan. Better hardware. Okay, quick ground floor, because the show never really sits you down and explains any of this. The Green Lantern Corps is not a team of friends who decided to fight crime. It's an institution. Somebody founded it, somebody keeps it running. Somebody decides who gets a ring and who has it taken away. Those somebodies are called the Guardians of the Universe. Small blue immortals, very old, very sure of themselves, sitting on a planet called Oa at the center of everything. And their whole deal, basically, is that they looked at a universe full of suffering and decided somebody ought to do something. Which is, honestly, a sentence you can't really argue with. That's the trap. That's the whole trap, right there at the start. And the show knows this history. It doesn't act it out. It just says the name once, quickly, and moves on. The most dangerous beings in the galaxy. And they're not an enemy empire, or some monster from outside. They're the last thing this same organization built. Chris Mundy, who runs the show, put it together in one sentence when he was talking about why Sinestro matters to the story. I mean,
it's like, how much am I being programmed or how much am I being parented? And of course, the Manhunters themselves were programmed.
That's the spine of the whole thing. The machines were programmed. Sinestro trained Hal. Hal is training John. And at every step, a set of rules gets handed down by someone older who is very confident those rules are correct, which changes how a big chunk of the pilot plays once you know it. Because, honestly, most of the first hour is 2 men in a car, and one of them is teaching the other one how to be a cop, not flying, not fighting, how to knock on a door, how to read a room, how to tell when a man is lying to you about where he was on Tuesday. It's a training montage that forgot to be a montage. Kelly MacDonald, who plays the sheriff.
I said it. John is just very measured in everything. He's very watchful, and Hal just works through chaos.
Described the pair better than we could. 2 methods, 1 badge. Fine. And nobody in that car ever asks the question the whole show is built around. Who gave us this authority, and what happens when we're wrong? And they don't ask, because they don't have to. The ring already answered it. The ring picked them. The ring came from Oa. Oa has been doing this for a very long time, and that is the entire chain of legitimacy. A badge from an institution nobody in Nebraska has ever heard of. And look at who the ring picked here, because the show is careful about it. John Stewart is a former Marine sniper who became an architect. Hold those two things next to each other for a second. A sniper is a man trained to make one irreversible decision at a distance, alone, on somebody else's authority. An architect is a man who spends years planning something that other people will live inside. One job is about ending things precisely. The other is about building things that outlast you. That's who the Guardians handed the most powerful weapon in the universe. Not a soldier and not a builder. Both in the same person, unresolved. And there's a scene early in the episode that reads completely differently once you're thinking about programming and inheritance. A boy stands against a wall. His father does something no father should do. The whole point of the moment is whether the boy flinches. Nobody in that scene has a ring. Nobody in that scene has heard of Oa. But somebody older is testing whether somebody younger can hold still under pressure, and then deciding what that means about him. That's the same evaluation The Ring makes, run by a man in a kitchen in Nebraska. The show puts that scene before it puts any of the cosmic stuff. We don't think that's an accident. And Nebraska notices. Of course it does. This is the move we didn't expect from a superhero show, and it's the reason the whole Guardians idea stops being abstract. The town doesn't want them there. Not the villain doesn't want them there. The town. And the sheriff is the sharpest version of it. Kelly MacDonald says her character wants them gone from the first radio call, before she's even met them.
You know, there's a real sense that Green Lanterns are like welcomed anywhere, and Hal Jordan is a celebrity and he's loved, but there's a sense that this town doesn't want them.
So watch her in the episode with that in your ear. She's not being difficult. She's being jurisdictional. Two men arrive with powers nobody voted on into a case she was already working.
It's bad, and she wants them gone, from the minute she doesn't even meet them,
And the only thing standing between her and them is her being polite about it. That's the Guardians' policy arriving in somebody's actual town. Not as a philosophy, as two guys in a car who outrank you and can't explain why. One moment here bothered me longer than any of the big ideas did. There's a stretch at the taco stand where Hal is just a local celebrity. People want photos. A kid hugs him, he signs a napkin. It's warm. It's played for comedy. The whole thing goes by in seconds. But that's a man who was handed galactic authority being treated like a retired quarterback. Nobody there is afraid of him. Nobody asks what he's allowed to do in their town, or who he answers to, or what happens if he decides they're a problem. He's famous, so he's safe. I don't think the show is calling the town naive. I think it's showing how power actually gets accepted, not through paperwork, through familiarity. He's been around long enough that the question stopped occurring to anybody. And that's the quietest version of the Guardians' problem in the whole hour. Their authority works best exactly where nobody thinks about it. Here's a detail you only catch if you go back through the episode and actually count. Green light barely exists in this episode. Actual ring use, actual constructs, any green at all. 43 shots out of more than 800. Roughly 5% of the hour. Yes, we counted. Somebody has to. And apparently that somebody is us. And what they use it for is not saving planets. It's a $20 bill at a jukebox. It's a lighter. Kyle Chandler, who plays Hal, listed his character's 3 main uses of the most powerful weapon in the universe.
1, money. 2, a church key to open a beer bottle. Yes. And 3, a post-coital light.
And it's one of the funniest things in the whole press tour. Funny. Also, if you sit on it for a second, kind of damning. That ring is Guardian technology, handed out under an oath, and the man carrying it uses it to open beer and pay for songs. Nobody on Oa knows. Nobody on Oa can know. There's no ledger, no audit, no partner in the car, until this season. Aaron Pierre described how John's constructs work, and the contrast tells you what the show thinks about all this.
So, if you ask John to, hypothetically manifest a car, he's going to build the car inside out. If you ask him to manifest the watch, he's going to build the inner workings of the watch.
A former Marine sniper who became an architect builds his constructs from the inside out. The retired legend uses his to light a cigarette. Same ring, same authority, same oath. The Guardians' selection process produced both of these men and cannot tell you which one it wanted. Okay, so the Guardians decided the fix was picking better people. Let's see how that's going. The same rules that picked Hal Jordan and John Stewart also picked a man named Guy Gardner. If you saw Superman, you've met him. Bowl cut, loud, absolutely certain he's the best one in any room he's standing in. Nathan Fillion plays him, and what he says about the character is sharper than anything a critic has written about the Corps.
I think that the idea of being a Green Lantern really suits Guy because he thinks he's pretty special.
Pedestal-like. I mean, that's an actor describing what getting chosen does to a man who was already sure of himself. So the vetting process produced a man whose main objection to the Corps is that it has other members in it. Somewhere on Oa, that's filed as a success. And the Guardian system has no mechanism for that, because their system checks one thing at the moment of selection and then never checks again.
There might be someone who's better than him. That's untenable.
It's the competition of lanterns that gets Guy down. The fact that he is a lantern is great, but the fact that there's other ones, it's like, come on.
The Ring doesn't do performance reviews. Fillion also says the thing that gets closest to what the show is about, and he isn't even trying to be clever. One per sector. That's the design, apparently. An entire slice of the galaxy gets one officer.
Green Lanterns are not meant to work together. There's one per sector, man. You're a lone wolf.
No partner, no oversight, no station to report back to. In police terms, that's not a department. That's a sheriff with no county line and no election. And think about what that does to the person carrying it, right? There's nobody to check your work. There's nobody to tell you that you got it wrong last Tuesday. If you decide a thing is a threat, it is a threat, because you are the only opinion in several trillion cubic miles of space. The Guardians built a system with no room for a second opinion, and then selected for people confident enough to work in it, which is why the show, putting two of them in one car, is such a pointed choice. It breaks their own rule. For the first time in a very long time, a lantern has somebody in the passenger seat who can tell him he just did something stupid. Now, none of this is new. Tom King says so himself. When he was explaining the Guardians,
You can see in comics from Watchmen to Squadron to Supreme to Kingdom Come is this distance between how to save someone and how to control someone.
he put the show in a lineage. 3 books, 3 versions of the same worry. And yes, we're aware that answering "is this show about fascism?" with "let me tell you about 3 graphic novels" is the most predictable move available to us. Give us a minute, it goes somewhere. Watchmen asks who watches the people watching you. Squadron Supreme is about superheroes deciding to just fix the world properly, taking over the government and discovering that fixing people is a job with no floor. Kingdom Come is the one where the heroes get so far ahead of humanity they end up building a prison for their own kind. Every one of those stories starts from good intentions. That's the requirement. If the people in charge were cruel, it'd be a much easier story and a much less useful one. What makes those books work is that none of them let you off the hook. You can't read Watchmen and come out thinking the answer is obviously no oversight, or obviously more. The whole design is that both positions cost something, and the story makes you hold the bill. And here's what the Guardians add to that shelf. In Watchmen, the heroes decide for themselves. In Kingdom Come, they drift. The Guardians are the only ones who built an institution, watched it commit a genocide, shut it down, and started a second one on the same premise. Here's what that actually means in practice, because institution is a word that slides right past you. Somebody wrote the rules the Ring enforces. Somebody decided that willpower is the quality worth selecting for, out of everything a person could be measured on. Somebody drew the map that carved the universe into 3,600 sectors and assigned one officer to each. None of those decisions were obvious. All of them were made by the same handful of people a very long time ago, and never revisited. And the oath tells you the mindset. Every lantern recites the same lines when the ring lights up, and not one of them is about justice or law or protecting anybody. They're about darkness and light, and about who should be where. It's not a job description, it's a warning to everybody else. The show doesn't show them to us. Not once in the first hour. You get the ring, you get the light, you get a man in Nebraska who used to fly jets. The people who decided he should have that power stay completely off screen, and we think that's a choice, not an oversight. There's a question hiding under all of this that the show is smart enough not to answer directly. What is the ring for? Because the official answer is police work. Keep order in your sector. But look at what the ring actually does. It turns whatever you can hold clearly in your head into something solid. It's not a gun with more settings, it's imagination with a power supply. And that's a strange thing to hand a police force. A weapon does one thing, and everyone knows what it is. This does whatever the person holding it can picture, which means the limits of the tool are the limits of the person. There's no manual for that. There's no training that covers every case, because every case is new, which is exactly why the Guardian's selection problem is unsolvable, not just difficult. You can screen for willpower. You cannot screen for what somebody will imagine at 3 in the morning in a bad year. Okay, heads up, this next bit spoils the last few minutes of the first episode. If you haven't finished it, jump forward to the next chapter. Still here? Good. The episode ends with Hal Jordan in the snow. He isn't fighting anybody. Face down, blood at his eye, and the snow already settling on him like he's been out there a while. Chris Mundy explained why that's where they chose to leave us.
We wanted the reason to go back to Rushville to have as much emotional heft as humanly possible.
That's the storytelling answer. But Nathan Fillion, talking about how his character would react, accidentally gave us the institutional one.
They killed the Green Lantern? How? Like, that makes the mind work. Who killed the Green Lantern? Who could?
And it's the best moment in the whole interview. Who could? Think about what that question means for the people on Oa. Their entire security model is one officer per sector holding a weapon nobody can beat. If somebody can beat it, the model doesn't have a backup. There's no second lantern in the county. That's the design. And a system that can't lose a single officer without losing the whole sector is not a police force. It's a bet. Now, we want to be fair here. It would be really easy to turn this into a lecture, and the show is smarter than that. The Guardians aren't written as tyrants. Nobody in the pilot is oppressed by Oa. The ring saves a man's life in the first hour. Hal is beloved in that town. He signs napkins, kids hug him, a whole diner has his photo on the wall. If you want the case for the core, it's right there, and the show hands it to you before it hands you anything else. Tom King's phrase does the work here. Good intentioned characters. Not villains wearing a mask, people who mean it. The question the show is actually asking is smaller than, is authority bad? It is also harder, give somebody power. Then tell them they were chosen for it. What happens to their ability to hear the word no? Because the sheriff says no. The town says no too, and the answer both times is a polite version of, we're handling it. And there's a part of this we'd be cheating to leave out, because it's what makes the show more than an argument. Institutions in stories are usually either the enemy or the furniture. This one is neither. It's the reason the main character has a life at all. John Stewart without the core is a man with 2 careers behind him, and nothing in front. The ring gave him a job that uses every part of him at once. Nobody is being oppressed here. The ring is the best thing that ever happened to him. The show knows it too, which is why the first hour gives him so many small moments of just liking the job. And there's a comparison sitting right in the middle of the episode that honestly we missed the first time through. Look, Sheriff Carey has authority too. She carries a weapon, she can arrest people, she decides which questions get asked in her county. Where did she get it? From the people who live there. They can also take it back at the next election for any reason or none. That's the whole difference, and the show stages it as a scene rather than a speech. 2 kinds of power standing in the same field at night. One of them answers to the town. The other, one answers to a room nobody in the town has ever seen. Kelly MacDonald described how her character operates, and it's the description of somebody who knows exactly how thin her position is. A few moves ahead of everybody.
I think, well, it's like a game of chess. She's playing. She's a few moves ahead of everybody.
She has to be. She's the only person in this story whose authority can be taken away by people filling out a ballot, and she knows it. What she has instead is the county, and knowing it better than they ever will. And that turns out to matter. She's the one who tells them things they'd never have found. The local knowledge beats the cosmic authority, repeatedly, in an episode that could easily have made her the obstacle. So I'll put my own read on the table, since we're this far in. I think the reason the Guardians stay off screen in the pilot is that the show wants us to feel their absence rather than judge their faces. If you put 3 small blue men in red robes on camera in the first hour, the audience gets a target, somebody to boo. And the moment there's somebody to boo, the question stops being interesting. Keep them off screen, and the pressure has to go somewhere else. It goes on to the man in the car because he's the only piece of that institution anybody in Nebraska can actually see. When the sheriff pushes back, she's not pushing back against Oa. She can't. She's pushing back against John Stewart, standing in her field, at night, holding a light she didn't ask for. That's a smarter way to dramatize an institution than a council scene. And I don't think it's an accident that Tom King, who writes comics about exactly this, is one of the people who built the show. My guess about Season 2, and I'm aware guessing is free, and being wrong is also free, is that this is the pressure point they'll press on, not a bigger threat, a closer one. The show has spent a season establishing that the authority is borrowed, and stories like that usually end with somebody being asked to give it back. Okay, one last thing, and this one's about what's coming. Mundy has already said the second season won't be in Rushville. He was careful about it, but he was clear. Different environment.
To me, I'd want the feel, the spirit to be the same, but the feel to be different.
Same emotional DNA. Right. And if the emotional DNA of Season 1 is a small town telling an institution it wasn't invited, then the interesting move is not another town. It's up. It's Oa. It's the room where the decisions get made, with the man they trained standing in it. Mundy also confirms Sinestro is part of this story.
We wanted Sinestro in because he trained Hal, and Hal was training John.
And told us exactly what he's for. Hal put him away, and before that, learned from him. So look at the chain. The Guardians program machines. The machines fail. The Guardians pick men instead. One of those men goes bad. That man teaches Hal. Hal teaches John. And John is the one standing in Nebraska right now, with a ring on his finger and a sheriff telling him to leave. One more piece of that chain, because it's the part people miss. Sinestro didn't start as a villain. He was the best lantern they had. The model officer, the one they pointed at when they wanted to show what the system produced. And what he eventually decided was that order matters more than consent, which is not a foreign idea he picked up somewhere. It's the Guardians' own idea, taken one step further than they were willing to take it. That's what makes him useful to the story rather than just a name to drop. He's not the opposite of the core. He's the core with the brakes off. So if you go back to the episode after this, here's what changed for us on a rewatch. Watch how often anybody explains their authority. Almost never, which is convenient. The badge when it comes out is a ring, and the ring is its own argument. Nobody in Nebraska has any way to verify it, and nobody tries. Watch who gets asked and who gets told. The town gets told. The sheriff gets told, politely, and the only person in the hour who genuinely asks for permission before doing something is a local, in a small moment that would be easy to miss. And watch the green. Every time it turns up, notice what it's being used for and who's around to see it. Most of the time, it's private, small, and slightly embarrassing. That's not a budget decision. A show that wanted spectacle would find the money, and watch the two men in the car for how the training actually goes. Hal doesn't teach John how to use the ring. He teaches him how to handle people, which tells you what the older man thinks the job really is, and it's not what the oath says. So, do the Guardians actually mean well? Yeah, that's the honest answer. And it's the annoying one because every institution in this story means well. It would be so much easier if one of them didn't. And think about how rare that is in a superhero story, honestly. Usually somebody wants power for its own sake, and the hero's job is to take it off them. Here, nobody wants power for its own sake. The Guardians want a universe that stops hurting. Hal wants to do the job well enough to hand it over. John wants to be worth the ring. The sheriff wants her county safe. Everybody in this story is trying, and the trouble comes from the trying. The Manhunters were built to protect people. The Corps was built to fix what the Manhunters broke. Hal took the job. John took the job. The sheriff took hers too, and she's the only one in the episode whose authority came from the people she polices. So when we call the Guardians the problem, we don't mean the ring should be taken away. We mean a gift this size arrives with somebody else's plan attached. That plan was written by people who have already been wrong once, catastrophically, and the lesson they took from it was smaller than the mistake. We're not going to tell you where the line is. The show hasn't either, and honestly, that's why it's worth watching closely. It keeps handing you the argument instead of the verdict. But next time you watch the pilot, watch for who actually asks permission. Somebody does, exactly once, and it isn't the man with the ring. If you spotted it, put the time code in the comments and we'll go look together. I've watched that hour more times than is reasonable at this point, and I still find things sitting in the background of it. And if you think we've been unfair to a group of very old men who only ever wanted the universe to stop hurting, say that too. That argument has been running in comics since 1959, and it hasn't been settled yet.